Welcome to another edition of Andy Staples on 3. We have just watched USC get exposed. Jesse Simonton, we knew this was going to happen. We didn't know exactly when it was going to happen, but we knew when it was going, or we knew it was going to happen. I don't think I had thought it would happen with Caleb Williams throwing 3 first-half interceptions that all got cashed into touchdowns. I was thinking more Audric Estime just slowly demolishing the USC defense play after play after play, but that's not exactly how it happened.
This was a line of scrimmage game. That's what it was. It was, Notre Dame's line of scrimmage. They punished USC's offensive line, and, they forced the turnovers. They got the short fields. Sam Hartman and that offense was able to get, enough to, I don't really know if they've really found any answers offensively, but they were able to get enough against against the Trojans defense that, wasn't going to be able to come up with a stop. We said it earlier this week. Could Caleb Williams continue to be Superman for the Trojans? He wasn't tonight, and we saw the result.
No, and we said this last week. We said this after the Arizona game, that if he can't be Superman every single time, they're going to lose. And he had a terrible game, and they lost.
He did. 5 turnovers in this game. And then when you compound the fact that every time they were able to actually come up with an answer offensively, they got a score. Notre Dame immediately answered. They either came back with an offensive touchdown, or when USC had the touchdown in the second half, what happened? 99-yard kickoff return. Boom. The game's still over.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because it's interesting because the Zachariah Branch punt return sets up a USC touchdown, and you're like, oh, big special teams play. All right. USC is going to maybe come back. The ensuing kickoff.
Yeah.
Jadarian Price returns 99 yards for a TD.
Again, tackling is optional with the Trojans. That has been the case. And this was, the irony in this result, Andy, is that the defense wasn't the, A1 problem for the Trojans. And yet we saw multiple times tackling the 46-yard touchdown, catch and run pass that Sam Hartman had, the 99-yard kickoff return. The fundamentals still just aren't there. And so, this is, a week after Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley, multiple defensive players all came to the backing of Alex Grinch. Again, my case remains, this is an unserious team. They are an unserious, not only national championship, but unserious Pac-12 championship contender. I think the Trojans are going to lose 2 or 3 games in the regular season.
Yeah, this team won't beat Washington or Oregon, and probably not Utah playing like this.
No, not especially because, what had been masked, I think a little bit. And I'll shout out your former colleague, Antonio Morales at the Athletic, is, the beat writer there for the Trojans. He's written about this. Others close to the program, I think, have been less inclined to lean in, because it's not like the narrative I think that other folks want to kind of acknowledge. But their offensive line has been not very good this year.
No, it's funny because
Caleb Williams has been he's been awesome out of structure, but
right.
When he has been asked to do just like, let's just drop back and, throw the pill or do whatever, it hadn't been there. And he's been under siege. And tonight we saw what happened when he couldn't again be Clark Kent. He turned into Clark Kent.
Well, shout out to the couple of USC fans who spent all summer telling me that their offensive line was going to be amazing on Twitter. Like, they would not let it go. Every time something happened, they would be like, you were wrong about them. They're good. You're wrong about them. Like, no, they're not that good. They're fine. They're an okay offensive line, but they're not a national championship. Lincoln Riley teams, to this point, do not play on the line of scrimmage the way one must play to win the national title on either side.
And at this point, they don't play well enough to win the Pac-12 title. They did.
Correct.
He had offensive lines with Bedenbaugh at Oklahoma to win the Big 12,
Right.
He doesn't have that.
But then they'd get to the playoff and they'd see what the lines have to
Exactly.
look like to win the national title, and theirs don't
Precisely.
look like that. So
Precisely.
that's the thing. They're going into a league where you have to be even better on the offensive line than you have to be in this pretty good Pac-12. Like, this is a really good Pac-12. They're not good enough to win it. Next year, they're going to be in a league with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and Oregon and Washington. They're not going to be good enough to win it unless they get significantly better on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and they're going to be playing more teams like Notre Dame, which, again, Notre Dame didn't do anything spectacular tonight.
Right, Notre Dame's still on their schedule, by the way.
Oh, yeah, and Notre Dame's still on their schedule. But my point is that the Irish didn't do anything spectacular tonight offensively, and yet they hung 48. And now imagine USC doing this plus playing this Big Ten schedule.
And Caleb Williams is a Chicago Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have transfer quarterback X.
The threat, by the way, the threat of Caleb Williams to come back to school falls a little flat if he's got to play behind that same line next year against Ohio State's defense or Michigan's defense or, Penn State's. I'm blanking on who they actually play next
also
year.
Unserious is Caleb Williams' threat.
Right. Well, I think that was more about the Cardinals, which I kind of understand, but the Cardinals aren't going to get the number one pick. Corey Bryan in the chat asked, or I don't know if this is a statement or a question. There's no question mark, so I'm assuming it's a statement. Irish still have a playoff chance. No, they do not. They lost to a team that lost to Pittsburgh. They don't have a playoff chance. But if this were next year, yeah, they'd be very much alive.
And you know who else would be?
Who's that?
Iowa.
That's exactly. No, they wouldn't. You stop that right now. Because there will be a game called the Big Ten Championship game, and that'll take care of all that. But yeah,
12 teams, Andy. That's a lot of teams.
Yeah. You know what? Iowa doesn't get to play next year? A Big Ten West schedule.
Yeah, and you know what? Jeff Brom just screwed up a schedule that didn't include UNC, Florida State, and Clemson.
Yeah, it's his part. He wasn't supposed to go undefeated this year. Come on,
I
Jesse.
know, but that's an egg.
Well, let us talk Notre Dame, because this is a program that needed a win like this. Marcus Freeman needed a win like this after what happened against Ohio State, because they had that game. They should have won that game against Ohio State. They did not. Marcus Freeman needed this big home rousing victory to say, hey, look, it hasn't gone exactly according to plan, but I am the guy to do this job. Because let's be real, Jesse, if USC had gone in there and blown away Notre Dame, we would be asking some very serious questions about Marcus Freeman right now. We're not. And I don't think we're going to be, because I think
you're right.
They got through the grind.
No, you're right. And it was a grind. I mean, you're talking 4 consecutive primetime games where all eyes are on you. Again, back to back to back to back. You are the centerpiece of that 7:30 p.m. slate on the college football calendar. And you come up 2-2. That's not ideal, but you did. You took care of business against a UNC team that, again, you were favored, and the metrics all said you should beat the Trojans. And not only did you beat them, you handled them, convincingly. And so I think this does kind of spearhead, the Irish towards potentially a 10-2 season. I mean, I think they're probably, if they play like they did tonight, they're better than Clemson, which means you probably run the slate the rest of the way. You go to a New Year's Six bowl.
Yep.
You continue to build on a recruiting class, and you say, hey, year 3, we're going to be a little more comfortable. You're bringing in a top flight 5-star quarterback that spurned Michigan, that's coming to you. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a good feelings win for Notre Dame. Makes everything better the rest of the way. Just makes it a lot easier. And I think right now that's what they needed. They needed to stabilize that situation, because I do think he's going to be able to get better talent in there. I think they're serious about NIL. You saw that with getting Sam Hartman this year. They can be a year in, year out playoff team in that 12-team playoff.
Oh,
it
yeah.
is this whole new system is really set up for them to succeed.
Well, and to the viewer's question there, if I don't know, everyone has said we're set up for this chaos season. Well, we haven't seen that. There's been a lot of close calls and what have you, but we haven't had the upsets of 2007 to actually set up this chaos season.
Yeah.
But if Notre Dame was playing in a conference and they had a conference championship game and they had these 2 losses, then maybe with a long maybe you could see a path towards finding a way into the playoff. But without playing in a conference, they have no shot.
No, they don't. But that's okay. This is going to be fine. They're going to wind up in the Cotton Bowl or the Peach Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl, and they're gonna have a happy season. Especially if they can win that game. Like Notre Dame's had trouble winning that kind of game of late. Like if they could just go through and win that game, then they will be rolling into a system that is built for them, custom made for them, almost as if their AD was involved in its creation. Oh wait, he was. So
the only one that isn't part of a member conference. What would you know?
Exactly. Let us move on to the ACC, the conference that Notre Dame is.
This is what we got to talk about.
Is affiliated with.
Yeah.
Miami got the full Tez Walker experience. If you were wondering why North Carolina was so hell-bent on Tez Walker getting eligible, you saw it tonight. He's awesome. 3 touchdowns in his first start. Remember, he did play last week against Syracuse, but they deemed him eligible on Thursday. He finds out on Thursday. Game plan's already done. The hay's in the barn, relatively speaking, in terms of practice. So you're not really going to be much of that, a big part of that game plan, even though he did wind up catching some passes. He was targeted, I think, on 6 different passes.
He had damn close to 80 yards.
Yeah, but now you see what happens when he works with the ones all week. Holy crap.
He becomes Drake May's go-to guy. Suddenly he's looking like AJ Green out there. This was about the third quarter. The response that the Tar Heels had, to blank the Hurricanes 21-0 coming out of halftime. Yeah. This was a very, very impressive showing by North Carolina. I think this cements them as I don't know if they're equal, because I do think, we saw what Keon Coleman did. And Florida State does have, I think, maybe a higher ceiling, but North Carolina looks like they're a legitimate ACC contender.
North Carolina is a complete team. Like that defense is so much better. Kamen Rucker, who came on the show this week, guys, if you have not watched the interview with Kamen Rucker, go to YouTube, just Google Kamen Rucker, Andy Staples, watch that interview. You're gonna love that guy. And he had 3 sacks.
No, outside of Terrion Arnold, he's been one of your best. He's been one of your best guests this season.
Hard to beat Terrion Arnold, but yeah, he was incredible. And I think them getting better on defense is what's unlocking all this other stuff, because Drake May doesn't have to do everything for this team. Although I think tonight was a good showcase for what Drake May can do. People got a chance to watch him, and if you had the multi-box on YouTube TV, you could watch him right next to Caleb Williams. And now you probably understand why those NFL scouts are like, it's not that big of a gap between the two of them.
Well, yeah, and you talk about some dramatic Heisman Trophy odds that shifted in real time tonight, Andy, with what Caleb was doing, with what Michael Penix did, and then with what Drake May was doing at the same time with what was happening with Caleb Williams. Those odds were going all over the place. Caleb Williams went from the favorite to like 50-1.
Yeah.
By the end of the night here.
And I'm assuming Penix is the favorite right now and will be the next week at
favorite, but Drake May climbed up. Jalen Daniels, LSU, we'll probably touch on them.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels was good again.
500-yard performance. But this was to North Carolina. this was a spot. I was dead wrong about this game. I picked Miami plus 3.5. I thought they would bounce back, respond to kind of Mario's malpractice a week ago, and they were up. I mean, they played well in the first half, and then they just came out and got spanked, coming out of halftime, and that proved to be, the difference. Tyler Van Dyke was not very good. He got harassed into multiple bad interceptions. Again, that defensive line. Rucker had multiple sacks. They showed their promise in week 1 against South Carolina. They beat the hell out of Spencer Rattler, 9 sacks in that game. They've kind of been up and down, inconsistent a little bit, but they brought it tonight. And if they play like that the rest of the season, I mean, I think we're definitely looking like it's a North Carolina Florida State showdown in the ACC championship game.
William in the chat, do you think Clemson has a chance to beat UNC in Miami? Well, they're playing Miami next week. I definitely think they can beat Miami. UNC is a little bit tougher one, but that game is at Clemson. And, it's one of those deals where they have enough talent to have a puncher's chance. North Carolina is a better team than Clemson this year. North Carolina runs a more dynamic offense. They have more playmakers. They certainly have better receivers. They have a better quarterback. But again, Clemson has enough talent on the D-line, enough general talent on the roster to have a chance. And so that's probably North Carolina's toughest challenge remaining on the schedule. And then Florida State has to play Miami, obviously. That's their toughest challenge. We didn't talk about the Florida State game earlier, but they housed Syracuse just like North Carolina did last week. And Florida State is just absolutely rolling right now.
They are. I mean, they took care of business today. I would say don't sleep on Duke too, though, Andy.
Yeah.
They were down.
Just
Riley
destroyed
Leonard,
NC State.
down Riley Leonard, and that was literally a defensive performance. I mean, they could do nothing. Duke could really do nothing offensively. They only had 300 yards, but they had 2 ginormous explosive plays: a 56-yard touchdown pass from the backup Henry Blivens, and then Waters had a 69-yard touchdown run. And then you get a couple takeaways, a bunch of sacks. They had 5 sacks in the game, and they held MJ Morris to next to nothing. So you get Riley Leonard back. Duke's going to factor into the ACC equation because thus far their only loss is to Notre Dame.
It's to Notre Dame, exactly right. So that's going to be a fun race to watch. The ACC is better at the top than we give it credit for. The Louisville thing, we can talk about Louisville Pitt right now. This is one when we did the pick show, neither T-Bob, A-Bear, nor I was willing to pull the trigger on a Pitt upset.
I took the points. I bet on it tonight.
But we definitely discussed this as a potential trap game. I don't get to make fun of Pitt's carafe of sadness anymore. The
chalice.
Yeah.
The chalice
receptacle, the modest receptacle at the front of the football complex where people put their negative thoughts. We were calling it the carafe of sadness. It's now the carafe of happiness. That carafe will be filled with probably filled with
Cardinals
mimosas,
tears.
but bottomless mimosas for Sunday brunch. Yeah, exactly.
This was I went on multiple radio shows this week, Andy, and I was asked about Louisville because I wrote a piece about, is the ACC potentially in store for a chaos season? And I offered my skepticism because while I had written in the preseason that I thought that Louisville was a dark horse contender because of its schedule, I just didn't trust Jack Plummer to run the slate here. And lo and behold, he had his 3rd game of multi-interceptions this season, threw 2 picks. One were for a pick six.
Yep.
And, they get blanketed in the second half, 24-zip, and you lose to a 1-4 Pitt team. So
now, Christian Ballou did not break 50% completion, but he did throw for 200 yards, which is an improvement over what they were getting. So congrats to Pitt.
Yeah. Pat Narduzzi does it again.
Well, he did uncomplicate the race because this does now look like it's going to be a North Carolina, Florida State affair. This doesn't necessarily give you confidence that Louisville can run the table either. That they're going to face Duke in their next game, and then they also have to play Miami. They also have to play Kentucky, which does not count for the ACC standings, but does count. So that'll be pretty interesting to see what Louisville does. But Florida State and North Carolina feel like they are on a collision course. As Matt said in the chat just a few minutes ago, that looks like potentially the most interesting conference title game. Although I will say, if we get another edition of Oregon-Washington or whatever the Pac-12 winds up giving us, I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think those are definitely the two in the driver's seat for the most interesting first week of December showdowns.
Yeah, this was a night of very intriguing results. Let's go out west. Let's go to the Palouse, where Arizona destroyed Washington State, and Jed Fish's team had been playing really well, but had nothing to show for it. So they 7-point loss to Washington, which wasn't probably really that close, but nobody had hung with Washington at all at that point. They go triple overtime at USC. They were due for a breakthrough, and boy, did they get one against a team that had been really good.
Well, it turns out when you lose your YOLO quarterback and you just have a guy that doesn't turn the ball over back there behind center, it seems to help a lot. And while Jalen Delora was fun, he was not.
Noah Fafita is the guy.
Yeah, he was not it for the Wildcats, and Noah Fafita has proven to be it. And that defense too. Jed Fish, they brought in a host of transfers. Bill Norton from Georgia, the Justin Flo from Oregon, the former 5-star, a bunch of other guys. That defense has made a dramatic leap this season, Andy, and that's what kept them in the game against the Huskies, and they completely stymied Cameron Ward and the Washington State Cougars tonight, 44-6. That is an impressive showing. That's why going out west, everyone was penciling in all these wins for Deion Sanders in the last 2 weeks, and suddenly you blow up against Stanford. You have 4 other ranked teams. Not all those teams obviously will be ranked coming out of this weekend because of the results, but still better than probably Colorado. And folks were circling Arizona. Arizona is no gimme for any team in the Pac-12.
And that's why Colorado blowing that lead against Stanford is so devastating for them, because if they win that game, they're probably going to win another one somewhere in there.
Right.
But now they got to win 2 with what they've got left, and that is going to be very difficult. And like you said, Arizona was one of the ones that was a potential win there. If they're playing the way they're playing right now, Colorado's not beating them.
No, definitely not. To go into Pullman and do that. That's impressive.
It is incredibly impressive, and the way that Washington State was playing. So congrats to Jed Fish and to Arizona. Let's go to the SEC, Jesse, with a game that was 14-0. Kentucky's up 14-0 on Missouri. Missouri's running out of options. It's looking bleak. And Eli Drinkwitz goes into the bag of tricks and calls a fake punt and gets a touchdown pass, a 39-yard touchdown pass to Marquise Johnson from punter Luke Bauer. It was a dime.
Razzle dazzle, baby. Eli, the dork lord, bringing it up. That was, I don't know if you saw my tweet because there was a lot going on, but it was much later in this game that I tweeted that Devin Leary is both murdering Kentucky's season and my QB draft against Andy Staples. Because the Tigers basically after that, they ran away with it. That their defense completely bottled up Kentucky. They started to get after Ray Davis, who had a big first 2 drives. Devin Leary was awful for the Wildcats, throwing multiple interceptions, multiple turnovers. This was an impressive showing from Missouri's defense, really, because their offense, as prolific as it's been the last few weeks, Brady Cook, wasn't Luther Burden just had 15 yards, I think, in this game. It wasn't like they were running,
it was interesting. You look at their offensive stats and you're like, how did they do this? Because now some of it was turnover, short field kind of situations, the punter throwing a touchdown pass, but also they did mount a few drives that were fairly impressive. It was like either 3 and out or a drive or a touchdown drive. So there's not kind of nothing in between for Mizzou, but they've been very good. I mean, I don't know if they can go beat Georgia. Obviously, they gave last year's Georgia team its toughest challenge until Ohio State, but they certainly, I mean, they're bowl eligible. We were looking kind of side-eyed at Eli Drinkwitz going into this season. Well, he got extended. It didn't seem like he was in any danger.
And
but
now
it was
he's side-eyeing that Missouri NLI and saying let's pay up and get this 5-star that's still out there, that receiver. We got Mwari, the defensive tackle. Yeah, I mean the Tigers are looking good, and this is a rough. Speaking of looking bad, I mean conversely, I agreed with you with what you said earlier in this week on your show about Mark Stoops. But this is coming off those comments about his own roster. And then to be up 14-0 at home. And then to gag it like that.
T-Bob made a good point when he was on the Pick Show, because his thing was, if they like Mark Stoops, none of that's going to bother anybody. If they don't like Mark Stoops, and he's talking about the Kentucky players,
right?
It could cause a cascade, and some stuff could start rolling downhill, and that is what
transpired
seems to be happening. Yeah. So maybe not. Maybe it's just one bad game, but that didn't look good at all. And Kentucky will have to get things turned around. I know we're bouncing around, but look, I do want to go back to the Pac-12, because in our earlier edition of this, we had mentioned UCLA as a potential Pac-12 spoiler because they don't play Oregon or Washington. I don't think that's going to happen now, because Oregon State handed the Bruins their second conference loss in Corvallis, 36-24. That defense made Dante Moore's life fairly miserable.
Yeah, I will say I was dead wrong just earlier in this show about UCLA potentially being a Pac-12 spoiler, but I did caveat that point, Andy, with I am concerned because they have a freshman quarterback who is turnover prone. And lo and behold,
3 picks.
Dante Moore again. He may be it next season in the Big Ten when he has more seasoning and whatnot, but he has been just a turnover machine thus far in 2023. He basically cost them the game against Utah. He threw a pick 6 again last weekend, even though they, won against Wazoo. And then tonight he was just awful. And Oregon State they housed him, and that's a big win. And now maybe the Beavers take that place as the potential spoiler, because you don't know what you're going to get on a weekly basis from DJU. But with that running attack, that offensive line, and that defense, they can at least pose some problems for whether it is Oregon, Washington, or whoever else they face.
Yeah. This is going to be a just incredibly bonkers fun race in the Pac-12. The Oregon-Washington game was everything it was billed to be. It was Jesse, this has just been a great weekend. Because think about this, started Thursday night with that incredibly weird West Virginia-Houston finish. That was just wild. West Virginia, looks like they're going to lose. Then they march down the field. The tight end slips a tackle. They score. And it's like, oh, West Virginia's going to win. And you got Dana Holgorsen throwing his headset. You're like, oh no, is Dana Holgorsen getting fired? Nope. Hail Mary. They win.
Dana needed a prayer and he got it.
Unbelievable. And then you go to Friday night. So Alec A.O. Manor, I did a story on him for The Athletic at my old job when he was a recruit. He was a recruit in Massachusetts, and he's from actually Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada, and had gone to prep school in the Northeast because the goal basically was to get him to an Ivy League school. He's really smart. And so he was going to a prep school, playing football there. And then after the pandemic ended and they started doing in-person camps again, this guy just blew up. Like, he had offers from Tennessee and Penn State and Notre Dame. when I talked to him then, he was still trying to figure out where he was going to go. But you could kind of tell he was leaning towards Stanford because he wanted that Ivy League quality education, but then the highest level of football he could play with it. I've never seen anything like that. He had 294 receiving yards in the second half against Colorado. In the second half.
Just mossing Travis Hunter. I want to talk to you something specifically about that game that I think has been overlooked because it happened so late night. I wrote a piece on it this morning. I was one of the folks, hand raised, that went to bed at halftime and had to relive the second half early this AM, which was a funny, outtakes exposed or whatever, old takes exposed because of some of the tweets I had in the first half.
That's why you never tweet in the first half. That's the rule.
That's true. That's true. And I only had 2 tweets. I just tweeted a hair on fire and a Travis Hunter tweet, but they were getting retweeted like crazy this morning. But what do you think? Again, I think this has been a little bit under seen or told because of just the whole narrative of the comeback writ large. But I wrote about it this morning a little bit. Deion Sanders's overtime strategy was bizarre and weird against Colorado State. And the fact that he doubled down on that again in this game, and it was the difference in costing them. The fact that he's like, I will take the ball even though my defense is awful. Well, I mean, what do you think about that?
I don't think that matters. Jesse, I really don't think it matters because the thing that kept Stanford in the game, that forced the second overtime, was a catch like you will never see again. I mean, that was like the pro throw catch against Southern Miss. It was that good.
You're right. You're absolutely, it was insane. And I noted that in the piece. It was insane. But to literally, for the viewers that didn't watch it and have just box scored or just saw that Colorado had, an all-time collapse, Deion Sanders has this strategy where he takes the ball first, no matter what. And so Colorado scored offensively in the first overtime, even after they had given up this, big-time comeback. Stanford immediately answers with this insane catch. And then Colorado, again, because they went for it first, has the ball again to start the second overtime. Shedeur Sanders throws an interception against this defense that's allowing 36 points per game, and just a sieve, on the front and the back, immediately gives up a field goal and the game's over. It's just, it's an insane strategy and a coaching deal that I think has probably been underplayed a little bit just because of the whole collapse, in its totality.
I don't think he's going to do it again.
You don't think he's done it? He's done it now twice this season.
I know he did it. He did it for a reason against Colorado State, which made sense.
Both times he said he wants to put pressure on the defense.
Yeah, well, the Colorado State defense was collapsing at that point. That his own defense was collapsing at this point, though. Yes. That's the difference. Or maybe that was the reason. But Mock Schnell with a really interesting question. And I saw this tonight and started thinking about the future. Anyone see the Kansas State freshman QB tonight? That would be Avery Johnson. Fast and rushed for 5 touchdowns. Yes, Avery Johnson is lightning fast. And K-State beat Texas Tech 38-21 in Lubbock. They can beat TCU. They can beat Houston. If Avery Johnson is the guy, and I thought it was very interesting because he played all but one series in the second half. Like, he split time with Will Howard in the first half. And remember, Will Howard played very badly in that loss at Oklahoma State last week. If Avery Johnson's the guy, remember, true freshman, top 100 recruit. I don't think he was a 5. He might have been a 5-star.
He is a 5. He was a 5-star.
He was a 5-star, yeah. NIL, by the way, a big reason he's a K-State.
Stayed home.
So he's really fast, and if you're not prepared for that, which they've used him enough that Texas Tech probably did work on that during the week, but he is so fast. I'm just saying, November 4th, they go to Austin. We are assuming that Oklahoma and Texas will roll on to the Big 12 championship game. And I think it's a very safe assumption. But if Avery Johnson changes the math for Kansas State. That suddenly becomes a much more interesting day.
Hey, Texas has got an interesting day next week. They got to go to Houston. If a bunch of Cougars fans don't sell off those tickets, that could be an interesting game. I'm
not very worried about them against Houston.
I'm not either.
I'm going to say that right now.
Another interesting upset today, though, Andy. Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
Mike Gundy getting it done back to back.
And Mike Gundy's comments during the week about, hey, stop giving so much to the athletic department and start giving it to NIL. Like, hey, maybe he is going to change. Maybe he is coming around.
I don't believe that. But that was an interesting comment. I want to pose a question for you, though. So Kentucky's out. Kansas is out. Mm-hmm. A couple other teams are out. Wazoo's going to be out of the top 25. So we got several teams going out. Air Force beats Wyoming. They're definitely going in. Missouri beats Kentucky. Definitely going in. 2-loss team. Who would you have in? Would you put in a 2-loss Clemson, who is idle this week?
Right.
Or do you put our not going to hit the drive for 325 Iowa Hawkeyes?
It's got to be Iowa because they've only lost once on the road to an undefeated team. It's got to be them. Now, Clemson's lost to 2 very good teams as well.
Right.
And
the power ratings all have Clemson still as a top 18 team and what have you. But AP voters don't care about that.
But I seriously think it's going to be Iowa. If I'm just guessing, it's got to be Iowa.
Yeah. I got to predict it. Once we wrap this up, I got to finish my AP top 25 predictions. And
well, you go do that because I think you're going to be right. And we have discussed this all thoroughly. We'll switch gears. Tomorrow's show, we'll start getting you ready. Penn State, Ohio State. It's next week coming up. Big one. Alabama, Tennessee next week. Big one. What a weekend.
What a weekend.
Got another one coming.
Love it.
Talk to you soon.